There's no escaping the fact the whole automotive world has gone completely SUV crazy, but for whatever reason, the whole thing just seems to have passed me by. I'm afraid I just don't get the whole 4x4 thing. Or at least I didn't. Could 15,000 miles in a Range Rover Sport SVR finally overturn my prejudices? Well, I'll be talking about that in a bit more detail. First thing, and I will be coming back to this, the feature that dominates this car and could perhaps be enough to overturn those preconceptions, it's the noise that comes out of the exhaust. Now this might seem like a minor thing, it's not. They're real exhausts. These aren't stupid trims buried in the bumper with fake big chrome bits on the outside and a little pea shooter buried within. That's a proper slash cut exhaust. Proper engineering and proper noise too, which I will now demonstrate. So what is the point of a fast SUV? That, to paraphrase the old joke, if you're building a fast car, you wouldn't start from here, would you? That was kind of the cynical starting point from which I began my 9-month loan with this Range Rover Sport SVR. But the more time went past with the car, the more I began to appreciate the little details that had gone into this car and the very obvious signs that this was a car built both with real expertise but also a sense of fun. What are these little details that I'm talking about? Well, the noise and those exhausts, which just dominates the experience of this car. If you are chauffeuring people around, maybe just turning exhaust to the quiet mode. Unless of course you want to drown them out, in which case, just the job. When you hear it from the outside and realise quite how outrageous this thing sounds, it does rather put it into perspective. So, the noise, that's a clear sign that the guys behind this car have a sense of humour, and why not? That's what it's all about, isn't it? It's about causing a bit of a scene. And that kind of goes against all my instincts, but as the miles roll by, I got a bit into it, I have to confess. The way the engine delivers its power is also very authentic, I like to think. Because it's supercharged, it's got a very kind of linear power delivery. It just feels like a much bigger engine. Now, of course, it's already 5 litres, so it's hardly small. It's not like the kind of whoosh-bang turbo engines you get in some of the rivals, like the Cayenne Turbo or the BMW X5 and X6M, those cars, which are all very boosty in their power delivery, very almost diesel-y, as a lot of modern engines are, so peak torque from just 1500 revs or something like that. This engine, you do actually need to wind it up a bit, and then it gets really exciting. So in its characteristics, it's kind of like a big naturally aspirated engine, but with the kind of boost that you get from forced induction from a supercharger. One of the first things I do whenever I get into a car with an automatic gearbox, which has a manual override, like the SVR does, and most other cars in fact, is I look at the gear knob. If, as it does in the SVR, it is back to go up and forward to go down, like the sequential in a racing car, then instantly I'm thinking, okay, the people who built this car are obviously drivers. You know, they're enthusiasts, they know what they're about. That kind of attention to detail is very typical of this car. Another one, the steering wheel. In this day and age, when steering wheels are kind of all sorts of odd shapes, they're quite small, they've got strange patches of Alcantara here and there, it really shouldn't be that difficult. And when you get into the Range Rover, the first thing you notice is that the wheel's quite big. And then the second thing you notice is that the rim is quite slim. Now that's a properly kind of geeky little detail. You kind of steer it with your fingertips. What's special about that? Well, it kind of informs your inputs into the car. You kind of, although it's a big, heavy, brutal car with, you know, fairly macho manners, it's still a car that you position carefully on the road and you're accurate with your inputs. Now it's got the influence of Mike Cross, the celebrated vehicle integrity chap, all over it. You know, when you drive with Mike Cross, he drives very precisely, and these kind of details permeate throughout the driving experience. So the dampers have just a lovely kind of fluidity about them, and the body control is just brilliant. And let's face it, there's a lot of body to control. Yes, this all-aluminium Range Rover Sport is a lot lighter than the old one. It's still a lot of car, and a lot of technology required to bring it all under control. But somehow they've managed to make it drive quite unlike anything else in the market. Now, I noticed this on one of my very early drives with the car. I'd gone up to North Yorkshire to go and see my dad. Now, anyone who knows that part of the world will be familiar with Sutton Bank and its signature hairpin bend halfway up the hill, which is incredibly steep. Amazingly, I got a clear run, and the road was a bit wet like it is today, and I went in a little bit hot. It understeered a little bit, and I thought, okay, well, there we go. That's, you know, kind of what you'd expect, really. So I lifted off, and then weird things started happening. It kind of backed itself into the corner like a hot hatch. So it kind of rotated into the corner. I thought, okay, well, that's good. I'll get on the power now. Like a Subaru, like a Japanese rally rep. It powered up all four wheels and exited the corner in this pretty subtle but very obvious four-wheel drift. And this was, I think, in my first week of ownership. I realised that this car is really something a bit special. And it all sounds a bit infantile and maybe pointless the way most people drive, I don't know, but none of the rival cars I've driven in this price bracket do things like that. They're all very serious. They're all about grip and traction and out-and-out performance. But I think what sets the SVR apart from those is, again, what I keep coming back to, just that sense of fun. At 95 grand list and 105 grand with all the options on it, this is not a cheap car or a slow one, but amazingly, the Cayenne Turbo S is even more excessive than this, and I think starts at about 118 grand. The one we tested was priced up to 123 with all the gadgets and gizmos you could hope for. Now, that's got 570 horsepower against the SVR's 550, but I just didn't enjoy driving the Cayenne as much. I think it was partly due to its much more kind of boosty power delivery. It was not as exploitable as this, but it was also two things. I couldn't really see out of the Porsche, and the steering just felt horrendously vague, and as a result I just had no confidence in placing it in the corners, knowing what it was going to do. And I could see that at kind of fast road pace, James was much happier in the Range Rover, and I was having to really dig deep to keep up with him. And when we got out, he was just relaxed, going, yeah, I was just driving normal pace, whatever. But that's the kind of feeling you get from driving this car, and the benefit of the quality setup that's been done on it. Now, an SVR is the performance derivative of a regular Jaguar or Land Rover product, much you get with AMG or BMW M or Audi Sport, as it's now known. And it comes from the newly formed Special Vehicle Operations Division. So this was a really important car for them. This is the vehicle that kind of set the tone for what Special Vehicle Operations is all about. And you got the impression that they knew from the start that they'd kind of nailed the formula. And so it turns out, now we've got to drive it. It'll be interesting to see where the SVR brand goes from here, but it's certainly a pretty impressive opening gambit. So I did my 15,000 miles in an SVR, turned me from a fast SUV cynic into a fast SUV fan. Well, overall, I still remain a little bit sceptical about the whole genre. This particular car, though, I absolutely love, and I think those many happy miles will stay in the memory a long time, and they certainly have opened my eyes to what is possible when you approach something like this with a bit of character, a bit of charisma, and, as I keep coming back to, a sense of fun. I've really enjoyed my time with the Range Rover Sport SVR. It's kind of bittersweet that this is going to be my last drive in it. I'm going to miss it quite a lot. Whether my neighbours will is another matter.